And what do you think about efforts that are being made through technology, through artificial intelligence, to recreate the early Beatles, making your voice sound younger, bringing those voices back, well, from the grave, really?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a very interesting thing, you know. It's something we're all sort of tackling at the moment, you know, and trying to deal with what's it mean, you know. Yeah, as people will I don't hear that much because I'm not on the internet that much. But people will say to me, "Oh yeah, there's a track where, you know, John's singing one of my songs," and it isn't. It's just AI, you know. So all of that is kind of scary, but exciting because it's the future. And we were able to use that kind of thing when Peter Jackson did the film Get Back, where it was us making the Let It Be album. And he was able to extricate John's voice from a ropey little bit of cassette where it had John's voice and a piano. He could separate them with AI. They tell the machine, that's a voice, this is a guitar, lose the guitar. And he did that. So it has great uses. So when we came to make what will be the last Beatles record, it was a demo that John had that we worked on, and we've just finished it up. It'll be released this year. We were able to take John's voice and get it pure through this AI, so that then we could mix the record as you would normally do. You know, so it gives you some sort of leeway. So there's a good side to it, and then a scary side, and we'll just have to see where that leads.
So many of you have probably heard the news, but for those who don't know, Paul McCartney has recently announced he is releasing, quote, the last Beatles record, with the help of artificial intelligence and with the aid of his old pal, John Lennon. We still don't know which song it will be, rather if it will be the anticipated Now and Then, a new unheard song, or an old Lennon-McCartney tune from the Beatle days. We know it is a John Lennon demo that they've finished, and since the Threedles had already worked on Now and Then in the 90s, and Paul expressed the desire to release it officially, the probability it will be this one is tremendous. But who knows? John made so many songs during his hiatus in the late 1970s. It could be any song, really. Honestly, I wish Paul went even further and made a whole album of AI songs with all the Beatles. But we can only dream.
In his recent Penn Sunday School podcast, magician Penn Jillette shared an incredible story about his visit to Abbey Road Studios with Giles Martin, providing secret facts about the Beatles' still unheard upcoming single. Check it out.
We were at Abbey Road, and it was really nice because Giles gave us the full tour of the Beatles' Abbey Road Studios 2 and 3.
That's really
And then we heard the new Beatles single.
So there's going to be a new Beatles single?
Yeah, it'll be out in September, I think. I'm going to now tell you about it. So did you watch Get Back?
I didn't.
You did. Well, one of the things that's so amazing about Get Back is that they had what's called AI is really machine learning. They separated the voices. There's one mic on the camera, and people are talking in the background, and it's crystal clear, and it's broken on stereo. In the room with one microphone, they ended up with, 20 tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Because they taught the computer program, this is what John Lennon sounds like, this is what Paul McCartney sounds like. So they could actually, when John and Paul were talking at the same time, separate them into separate tracks.
That's crazy.
So there was a recording, the last recording on earth that Paul McCartney has not made money off. It was John Lennon playing piano and singing while watching TV. The TV is loud, and John is playing the piano and singing. Now, Paul had this in the 80s when they were doing all the anthology stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul got every engineer in the world and said, can you take out the TV? And they all tried, and they all failed.
Yeah.
Just failed. So now, Giles said to the people that did the stuff on Get Back, you take out the TV on this? And they said, yeah. And sent them John Lennon, piano from 3 mics, voice, and the TV.
Oh, wow.
All separate.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's insane.
Yeah, and Giles said, we didn't use the TV. So they now have a verse and a chorus
Yeah.
of John Lennon. Now, in the 80s, Paul played the John Lennon track for George, and George played some guitar over it. And they have that.
I mean, it's interesting that there just was an article recently with all the AI stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Ringo saying, we'll never release any John Lennon AI. And I think that's important for the story that you're telling right now.
Well, that's why when Paul said it was AI, it kind of isn't.
Right.
Because they're separating, right?
Yeah.
But then it kind of is, because Paul wanted to sing along with John, because that's one thing the Beatles did, and they made Paul's voice younger.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Then Paul played bass. Then they put an orchestra in. Then they put horns in.
Oh, no.
Then they repeated the John thing, 4 times to make it a full song. Then they put George's guitar.
Yeah.
Then they had an outtake from Because the world is round.
The world is round, it turns me on. Because the world is round.
They had an outtake from that, which had George, Paul, and John singing together in a chord. They took that chord, changed the key,
Oh, my God.
and had that be their backing vocals.
Okay, there's so much to unpack here. First of all, I don't know if anybody has mentioned or noticed this, but notice that neither Paul, Ringo, nor Penn have referred to the song as Now and Then, so we really don't know what song it's going to be. It could be Now and Then, but it could also be a completely different one. Also, apparently Paul and or Ringo misspoke when they said the song wouldn't use AI to alter the tracks, and if Penn's account is true, and we have no good reason to believe he's lying, the song will use AI to make Paul's voice sound younger. Anyway, let's continue.
Then Giles called Ringo and said, would you play drums on this new Beatles track? And Ringo said, I don't want to. And Giles said, which I love, you're the drummer for the Beatles. This is the last time you'll ever be asked as the drummer for the Beatles to play drums with the Beatles. And Ringo said, okay, I'll record it here at my house. And now there will be a new Beatles single out in about a month. And Mock sat there, jaw dropped,
Yeah.
mind blown, going, we're listening to the new Beatles single. And then Giles and I started talking about the quality of the song. And Moxie interrupted us and said, it's the new Beatles single. He's also going in and remixing the Red and the Blue album with all those tracks laid out separately. Because now they can give him 5 tracks of drums.
Oh, wow.
What really struck a chord with me in this excerpt is that Gillette emphasizes the incredible fact that they're listening to the new unreleased Beatles single, but he doesn't mention how great the track is. And then, right after, he mentions that he and Giles Martin were discussing the quality of the song. This may put into question whether or not the composition will be that great anyway, and honestly, if they're questioning the quality of John's composition, I don't think this really is Now and Then, because in my humble opinion, Now and Then is freaking awesome.
And I've heard remixes before, but this sounded so live. It sounded like Imagine Dragons, except it was the Beatles. It was that well recorded.
Yeah.
You hear John and Paul on one mic,
Yeah.
and you can tell that's John and that's Paul. But he played us some stuff that he'd remixed, and it was John and Paul, but instead of being in the stereo mix,
Yeah.
instead of being on the same mic like they've always been for my whole life,
Yeah.
they were like a foot apart.
As Paul McCartney recently did, Ringo Starr took the time to update fans, saying that a final Beatles single, based on a demo by John Lennon that Paul, Ringo, and George considered turning into a Beatles track in the 90s, is not an AI-driven project, despite the advanced technology being used now. It's not about AI, Ringo said. It's not like we're pretending something. Actually, it's John and Paul's voice and bass, George on rhythm guitar, and me on drums. And the 2 new things are Paul's bass and me on drums. I really worked on it just a few months ago here, and it worked. It's a beautiful song. Despite all the madness happening around, it's still a beautiful track, and our last one. The new song was the third one the three surviving Beatles attempted in the 90s based on some of Lennon's music, while they were working on Free as a Bird and Real Love, with producer Jeff Lynne for the anthology project. Why revive it now? I don't know. Paul must have had a slow day, Ringo joked. He said, "You know that track we did? Do you want to work on it?" Ringo wanted to, so Paul sent him the files. I played drums and sang on it, and then Giles Martin flew to Los Angeles with McCartney to add the strings. It's poignant because all four of us are there, and there'll never be any more. So, to summarize what Ringo made clear, John's vocals, Paul's vocals and bass, George's rhythm guitar, and Ringo's drums are included. George's singing voice on the track is included, as he confirmed in an interview with People. Paul's bass and Ringo's drums are new recordings. George's guitar is from the original 1994 or 95 session. Paul recorded a guitar solo on the track. Giles Martin and Paul came to Los Angeles and added the strings, and it was made clear that it is a project created and led by Paul McCartney.
Well, it's very moving, actually. It is John on the record. I know there was some hassle that it wasn't John. It's absolutely John as he was, and me as I was, and now how I am now. So, but it moves me because, I miss those two. But Paul and I are great friends, so life goes on.
Right here, everybody, right here.
We worked on it when we did the Free as a Bird sessions. We did 2 of them, and then we got to the third one, and we sort of let it go. And, the one that Jeff Lynne was producing. And I don't know, Paul must have had a slow day, and he says, that track we did, why don't we, do you want to work on that? I said, sure. So he sent me the files, I drummed on it and I sang on it, and I sent it back, and Giles puts it together. And then Giles actually flew back to LA with Paul, who put the strings on. And, I can only tell you it's a beautiful track, and it is moving because the 4 of us are there, and they won't be ever again.
Now with a bonus track from the Beatles, Paul McCartney announcing the release of a new song sung by none other than John Lennon. Lara is here with the details. Good morning, Lara.
This is unbelievable, Michael. Good morning to you and to you. So, Sir Paul is calling it a final Beatles record and says it combines something old with something very new. John Lennon's voice taken from an old demo tape, along with a little help from a new friend, artificial intelligence.
This morning, Beatlemania is back. This time, like we've never seen or heard before. The legendary band set to release new music with the help of artificial intelligence.
All of that is kind of scary, but exciting because it's the future.
Former Beatle Paul McCartney telling BBC Radio 4 that AI technology has made it possible to create one more Beatles song that will be released later this year. McCartney says that John Lennon's voice was extracted from an old demo in order to finish the song.
It was a demo that John had that we worked on, and we've just finished it up. It'll be released this year. We were able to take John's voice and get it pure through this AI, so that then we could mix the record as you would normally do.
The 80-year-old artist says this will be the Beatles' final record. McCartney also describing to BBC Radio how director Peter Jackson used AI in making the Beatles documentary series Get Back.
He was able to extricate John's voice from a ropey little bit of cassette where it had John's voice and a piano. He could separate them with AI.
According to the BBC, the upcoming release is possibly one of several songs that were part of a cassette tape labeled For Paul, which Lennon had made prior to his death in 1980.
AI in music is the biggest thing that's happened since the advent of streaming, and perhaps Napster before that, which completely disrupted the entire music industry. This is going to change things drastically.
But in recent months, AI has also been used to artificially work artists' vocals into songs they never recorded, like in Beyonce's hit Cuff It. This rendition featuring a recreation of Rihanna's voice. And artist Drake left fuming after this hit from rapper Ice Spice.
You thought I was feeling you?
It became an AI-generated Drake remake without his permission. Drake calling it the final straw.
There are many different battles that are coming and struggles that we're facing. We know it's not going anywhere, so there are a lot of legal cases that are likely to fall.
Indeed, lots of questions over this. Sir Paul used AI to perform a virtual duet with John Lennon in a live performance of I've Got a Feeling. He's also opening an exhibit later this month in London featuring previously unseen photos from the early days of Beatlemania. So, we are getting new music.
Last June, Paul McCartney revealed that AI had been used to extract John Lennon's voice from an old demo in order to create a final Beatles song. It is likely that this track is Now and Then, which the three surviving Beatles attempted to record in 1995. They had already successfully recorded the songs Free as a Bird and Real Love based on Lennon demos. However, Now and Then was unusable as there was too much tape noise. The Beatles fandom was sent into a state of panic, as many thought that AI had been used to generate new material. People may have felt this way as multiple videos had recently started appearing on YouTube, which used AI to make it sound like Paul and the other Beatles were singing songs they have never sung before. Here are two short excerpts.
Strawberry fields, nothing is real, and nothing to get hung about. Strawberry fields forever. Talking away, I don't know what I'm to say, I'll say it anyway. Today's another day to find you shining away.
A week later, Paul clarified that AI had not been used to create any new material, and that it had only been used to separate John's voice from a demo. This type of AI is actually available for free online, and I used it to isolate some instruments from Helter Skelter.
Helter Skelter!
However, the AI that Paul McCartney used is much more accurate and is not available to the public. It was developed by Lord of the Rings director Peter Jackson and used to make quiet conversations louder on the 2021 documentary Get Back, and to separate instruments in order to remix the Beatles' Revolver. To demonstrate how groundbreaking this is, it's a bit like being able to turn a cake back into eggs and flour. People were also concerned about the fact that the late George Harrison was not around to play on the track, and that he had previously dismissed the song as rubbish. This is what YouTuber and Beatles collector Parlor Graham had to say about this problem.
And the argument that it shouldn't come out because George hated it is a moot point. How would anyone know how he would have felt about it today? Olivia and Danny have so far done a great job with George's legacy, and I have no issue trusting their judgment on this.
Here are some other Beatles YouTubers' opinions on the matter.
It's got a hell of a lot to live up to, but I'm very excited about it. And hey, maybe while they're at it, they can use that demixing technology to clean up other anthology songs. I mean, I would just adore a remastered version of Real Love, or pretty much anything off anthology.
Now, they call this new technology AI. I'm not so sure that it's true AI. After all it can be is algorithms going in search of the presuppositions of whoever programmed those algorithms. But if that's all it is, I have no trouble with this technology.
Thankfully, Ringo Starr would eventually clarify that all four Beatles would be on the track, including George. He also stated that the track was beautiful. Around this time, further evidence emerged that the new song would be Now and Then, as videos containing the original demo of the song started to be taken down from YouTube. At this point, most people believed that there wouldn't be any more information until the song's release. However, new material leaked out after Penn Jillette was let into Abbey Road Studios and then revealed information about the track on his podcast. What do you think of this news? Did they really use AI to make Paul's voice younger? Or is Penn Jillette wrong, and Paul's vocals were actually recorded years ago when he was younger? And they're remixing the Red and Blue albums, the huge Beatles compilations from 1973. Finally, when will all of this be released? In my opinion, the Red and Blue albums will be released for Christmas, while Now and Then will come out earlier, possibly in September or October.
After the recent revelation by Paul that AI has been used to extricate John Lennon's voice from an old demo, the Beatles community has been awash with discussion and rumour, not just about AI and its use, but speculation about what exactly that final Beatles record will be and how and when it will appear. Now, before we get into all this, let me say that I have no insider knowledge about anything to do with this project, and if I did, I probably wouldn't be allowed to make this video. Everything I'm about to say is nothing more than an educated guess as to what and when something might happen. Although it hasn't at the time of filming this video been confirmed, I think it's clear that the song Paul is talking about is Now and Then. The original plan for the anthology series was to have a reunion track on each set, Free as a Bird on Anthology 1, Real Love on Anthology 2, and Now and Then on Anthology 3. Now and Then was actually the second reunion song they attempted, in June 1994, but after revisiting the song in another session in February 1995, it was abandoned. One of the main issues which prevented it being completed back then was the quality of John's cassette demo, which had a loud mains hum throughout, which was impossible to remove satisfactorily with the technology of the day. It's true that George Harrison wasn't keen on the song, but his opposition to it only really began after they'd done Real Love. Paul recalled George's attitude about Now and Then in the Mr. Blue Sky Jeff Lynne ELO documentary, and appeared both amused and bemused about George's attitude towards the song, which he clearly liked and seemed determined to finish.
Well, fucking rubbish, this is. It was like, no, George, this is John. It's still fucking rubbish, you know. Oh, okay, then. So that one's still lingering around somewhere. I'm going to nick in with Jeff and do it, finish it one of these days.
The song clearly has a special place in Paul's heart, not because it was a song by John, but it reminded him of the last words John ever spoke to him, which were, "Think about me every now and then, old friend." AI, artificial intelligence, is a popular but divisive term, which has been used not just by the media, but by Paul himself in a recent BBC interview, when he said himself that AI has been used to extricate John Lennon's voice from an old demo. I think the AI Paul was talking about was the same system Peter Jackson used to such great effect in the Get Back film, where he was able to bring out buried conversations and separate instruments. He called it MAL, Machine Assisted Learning, which I guess is a form of AI. And the demixing technology used by Giles Martin on the Revolver box set last year. Could that be called AI too? Now I see this as a kind of update to the system used by Jeff Lynne and Jeff Emmerich when they were creating Free as a Bird and Real Love for Anthology 1 and 2. The use of AI in this respect, i.e. for restoration purposes or for enhancing what is already created, is, in my opinion, a positive thing. What has got many people up in arms is the idea that it will be used to artificially create new music or replace an already recorded performance. And while there are a number of videos already on YouTube which do that, I don't think that this is the case with Now and Then. The situation even prompted John's son Sean to take to Twitter to clarify the story by saying, "All we did was clean the noise from the vocal track. People are completely misunderstanding what occurred. There have always been ways of denoising tracks, but AI just does it better because it learns what the vocal is and is able to very precisely remove everything that is not the vocal." He went on to say in another reply that the track turned out beautifully, and I think everyone will be very happy. As for John, well, he was always into new tech and, who knows, might have been in favour of AI. And the argument that it shouldn't come out because George hated it is a moot point. How would anyone know how he would have felt about it today? Olivia and Danny have so far done a great job with George's legacy, and I have no issue trusting their judgment on this. So anyone claiming to know exactly what George or John would have done is just wrong. I find the restoration capabilities of AI very interesting and an essential tool for future Beatles projects. I'm fine with it, and as long as they don't include elements that don't belong to the four Beatles, I have faith that while Paul and Ringo are around to okay it, that won't happen, and that they are well aware that any product they put out using that technology must enhance and not spoil their legacy. Of course, there will be those who won't like it or even the idea of it, but they don't have to buy it or listen to it. But I'm an optimist, and I see this current project as enhancing their legacy rather than spoiling it. And of course, every new project brings in new listeners from a younger generation, which is always a win in my book. Now, the next big question is, in what form will Now and Then appear? And what does it mean, if anything, for the Rubber Soul box set? Will Now and Then appear as a single, an EP, or be the lead-off track for Anthology 4? Or is it going to be part of something bigger? Well, there was a clue given by Peter Jackson himself in an interview back in July 2022, where he said, quote, "I'm talking to the Beatles about another project, something very, very different than Get Back. We're seeing what the possibilities are, but it's another project with them. It's not really a documentary, and that's all I can really say. It's so technically complicated, I'm trying to work how exactly I'll do it. It's a live action movie, but it needs technology that doesn't quite exist at the moment. So we're in the middle of developing the technology to allow it to happen. I'm trying to anticipate what I might be able to do before it even exists. They're not fantasy epics, but they're pretty interesting." Looking further ahead, Peter Jackson is rumoured to be working on a project based around the Star Club tapes, where he uses his own AI technology to clean up the audio tapes and then, using pictures from the performances, animate the Beatles playing them. Let me know what you think about that in the comments, and indeed anything else I've mentioned in this video. Now, to me, that sounds like it could be a reworked anthology series. Broadcast in 8 episodes in late 1995, and then later in greatly expanded form as an 8-volume VHS, Laserdisc and DVD set, Anthology was meant to draw a line under the Beatles' legacy. Since then, a longer so-called director's cut of the series has emerged and has been circulating on the black market for some time. But this was nothing more than a first attempt at a finished version, which Paul, George and Ringo were shown, after which cuts were made. But new discoveries made since then, coupled with the advances in technology and the use of Peter Jackson's machine learning technology, makes it seem like the perfect time not only for its re-release, but the revamp and upgrade it truly deserves. I watched one of the DVDs recently and was shocked at the poor quality of a lot of the interview footage, for example. So it's not outside the realms of possibility that that could be upscaled and added to for a new documentary. Certainly, if someone like Disney Plus were going to stream it, they would demand something more high-res and modern-looking than what was released on the DVD. A reworked anthology could be the perfect place to introduce restored sections of, say, the Star Club tapes, which I'm sure Peter Jackson has had a go at doing already. Also, more home demos, extended treacle jams, upgrades to tracks like Leave My Kitten Alone and That Means a Lot, and it would be the perfect opportunity to drop in Paul's avant-garde sound collage, Carnival of Light. Space could also be made for some more music from the 67-68 period that was not part of the Pepper or White Album deluxe sets. Some extra Magical Mystery Tour or Yellow Submarine content, for example, or the February 68 session that produced Lady Madonna, Hey Bulldog and The Inner Light. It would also be a chance to release some of the material left out of the Get Back film, which Peter Jackson has said he has ready to go. Giles Martin is of course the natural choice for producer. After all, he has both experience working with actual Beatles tracks and Peter Jackson's extraction software. Now, given the success of Get Back, I can easily see an extended anthology series being streamed on Disney Plus at Christmas and maybe on a Blu-ray at some point. But although Disney hates issuing anything on physical media these days, At least Apple appears to understand that Beatles fans like and need physical product, so I'm sure there will be something to put on your shelf at some point. Now, I know how angry some people get about Disney and streaming, etc., but if you hate Disney more than you love the Beatles, that's your affair. But my love for the Beatles trumps my dislike of any media conglomerate. Now, the release of the Get Back film was announced in June 2021 and premiered 5 months later on the 25th to 27th of November. So is an official announcement close? And what does it all mean for the Rubber Soul box set? Well, I think that could still appear in the schedules later this year. The Revolver set dropped on October the 28th last year, having been announced on September the 7th, so there's still a way to go before any official announcement could take place.